Hello, welcome into our podcast today. Ask Aaron and Ask EJ. This is Coach EJ, the brand.
And it's Coach Aaron the Source. EJ, what are we gonna ruminate on today?
Oh man, this is a great subject that you and I talk about a lot in the gym. We had a long discussion a couple days ago, and the subject today, or questions to ask us, are: do you really believe in yourself? Your self-worth as an athlete. Do you believe in what you're doing? Do you believe you're a dude, as they say out there in the world these days, Aaron? That's what we're gonna kind of elaborate a little bit on today.
Yeah, I like that. You guys, a companion podcast to this might be one of our older ones would be Bet on Yourself. So you guys should check that out. And then we also did one, God, I forgot the title, but I think it's Athlete Confidence. So I
Yes.
think those two might go well with what we're going to talk about today. So, EJ, I'm gonna go ahead and let you kick this off.
I love it. I love it. Aaron, as you and I were going through our careers, or even when we were younger, and you and I really start to talk about the evolution of how an athlete gets to where they need to be mentally and their belief system. And I think you and I had discussed as we were growing up as kids, it was kind of ingrained in us, through our parents, through our friends, through what we saw out there in the public. And one of the things that you and I came to a conclusion on is that we just bet on ourselves. We believed in ourselves and what we were going to do. No one had to tell us we were good.
Hmm.
We knew we were good. It was something about this competitive energy that said, "Hey, I want to outdo you," and in a good way.
Right.
Even if we're competing against our teammates, we want our teammates to do great because we, as a team, would do great. But there's always that competitive edge that drove us to be the best we could be. And no one had to tell us, like, hey, you're going to be good. I remember this story, Aaron. My college coach said, hey, man, guys have a lot of confidence out here, but there's one guy that he's a freshman, but he doesn't act like a freshman. That's this guy, EJ. And for me, I knew that. He didn't have to tell me that. I knew I was good. I knew that I was going to go in and play. I think at a very early age, and I think it had a lot to do with just hanging around in the streets, playing street ball and playing
Right.
outside. It led me to have this belief system of, whether it was playing a pickup basketball game or running races, playing tag at
Right.
night, you didn't want to be caught. You want to be the best. And I think, that's just how it works. And you and I were talking about this for a couple days now. So I'm gonna kick it off with that, kind of just a general overall thought process and trying to understand how athletes think these days, and why don't a lot of athletes believe in what you and I had ingrained in us. And there's a lot of tentacles we can take and different approaches we can take, but I think it's a great subject to discuss today.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, without putting on my Freud or Dr. Phil hat, no,
Right.
I think it's pretty interesting because more and more that seems to be at the heart of what is kind of holding some athletes back. At least some of the ones that we're seeing in our gym, where
Right.
a kid has developed the physical tools and they've got the technical skills, but they're just not quite getting over the hump, or they're just not quite separating themselves from the pack. And I think, we've talked about this before. I think it's attitudinal. So, like you said, the belief. What's their belief system?
Right.
Now, some of that is just, I'm sure, nature and how your makeup as a human being and your character. But if you don't have that, how do you create it or how do you manufacture that? That's the question because that's what these kids have to do if they're going to want to create better opportunities for themselves and move on. So, that's
Tough one.
it's hard to, know where you start on that.
Right.
Obviously, one of the things that just jumps to mind, 'cause my mind is just going all over the place now, is I think we've got athletes who wait for validation.
Wow. I like that.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I said, when I was younger, I didn't have to wait for anyone to tell me I was good,
Yes.
even if I wasn't. Yeah.
Right. Right. Exactly.
You couldn't tell me different. And if you told me I wasn't, I was going to show you different. And and again, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but it seems to me we do have a generation of kids who are, and again, I hate to go back and say this all the time, but who are kind of raised on some of the the unicorn and rainbow sticker mentality, where you're getting a prize for everything, and I think you're getting false validation instead of true and honest criticism.
Right.
And so is there kind of an inflated ego or inflated sense of self-worth in these athletes? I don't know. Maybe that feeds into it. But what happens is these kids get to a come to Jesus moment, whether it's in sports or education, everything else, where, all these years they've gotten participation trophies and their parents have put stickers on their bumpers saying that their kid's an honor roll student but
Exactly.
there's never been any real context. Did you get, a trophy, but the level of play wasn't, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah.
where it
Yeah.
should be? Were you on the honor roll, but where, what was the bell curve, or I think that's called the bell curve of the class? What were you,
Right.
who were you competing or who are you compared against? And so when you hit true, as you move up in levels and you hit true competition and the air gets thinner, then some of these athletes find out that they can't operate and breathe at those altitudes because, once what they thought of themselves and their perception kind of gets cracked or shattered a little bit. And we even talked about this in our last podcast, just a couple weeks ago, where we talked about the whole, God, what was the name of it? But the verbiage aspect, calling everything elite,
Yeah.
calling everything
What's in the name?
special. Yeah, what's in the name? That
What's in
was
the
it.
name?
And so some of this stuff I think feeds into that. And as that veneer or that curtain is pulled back as they get up in levels because the truth starts to come at you a lot harder and people aren't holding back, you start to see that, oh, maybe I'm
Yeah.
not as good. And you might still be that good,
Right.
but it's been built on a foundation of some of these external things versus coming from you as an individual. And so you're relying on these external affirmations versus saying, believing truly in your heart.
Right.
You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that leads me to this question. Aaron, have we cheapened success
Oh,
or
yeah.
what it's means to have a trophy or be successful or like it used to be a thing where you were an honor roll student because you achieved a 3.85, 3.9
Mhm.
GPA.
Right.
Now it's 3.5 or
Exactly.
have we cheapened success all around in society to give the false narrative that you're good
Right.
and someone had to say, okay, you made it and here's the line
Hmm.
that says that. And I think we have. You mentioned, participation trophies, and it got me to think about We wanted people to feel inclusive and feel good about themselves. So we decided to give everybody a trophy because everybody's mental health was suffering.
Right.
And we thought that was the best for everyone at that time. We're finding now, X amount of years later, it's not the best for people because now when people actually talk about success is bottom line now. And
Hmm.
bottom line was never mentioned before. You knew you had to be successful, and this is what it took. Now, in every part of society, it's bottom line. You've got to have this or you're out. And now, with that kind of, hardcore like bottom line, what are athletes doing today to understand what that truly means? It's not a participation trophy anymore. Bottom line's this if we're using college baseball. And I saw something very interesting last night as I was looking through some articles about is the Power Four conferences changing how the NCAA rules on stuff now? Are they becoming the new NCAA?
Right.
So, this hardcore line that people are drawing now, the bottom line is affecting athletes now because no means no now, and yes means yes.
Hmm.
And if you don't believe in yourself, no is going to be more prevalent in your mindset instead of I believe, I don't care. You said no, I'm going to prove you wrong. I haven't seen any athletes come to me recently
Hmm.
that said, "Hey, Coach EJ, my coach doesn't believe I can do this. Man, I'm gonna show him that I
Right.
can. Show me right?"
Right.
And I was like, when's the last athlete I've had really say that? Like, I'm gonna prove these guys wrong. They don't believe in me. I'm gonna show you.
Well,
Um,
we just talked about this on the other, what was wrong with some of collegiate sports, and I like that you talked about your term cheapening of success, but we we've talked about this before. We have a generation of athletes and parents who are willing to take the easy out.
right.
So if there's a roadblock, if there's uncomfortable, if you're uncomfortable, if there's an issue versus working through or meeting that issue head on, they pull the ripcord. I'm
Right.
going to switch teams. Oh, I'm going to
Right.
go in the transfer portal. Oh, I'm going to transfer schools. Do you
Right.
understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And
Yeah,
and and
I do.
so they're not forced to sit in it. I mean, when I was, growing up, obviously you didn't have as many options. So,
Right.
but my dad was like, "No, you figure this out. You sit in it,
Right. Right.
And you did, and you figured it out. And I think that made you stronger, and I think that taught you how to persevere and believe in yourself because not all situations you can turn a situation around.
Right.
And we talked about this yesterday. Regardless of what, if you don't have the best relationship with your coach, if you're producing, you're you're playing. Now, it might be a tenuous relationship,
Right.
but if you're producing,
You're playing.
you're playing.
Absolutely.
So, and that was kind of my parents' thing was if you're bringing value, doesn't matter if you guys like each other or not. They're going to keep you. They're going to keep you in business. They're going to keep you in sports.
Absolutely.
So bring value. And after you bring value, then you have leverage.
Mm,
And
yes.
but if you don't believe in yourself, how can you get to that point where you can fight through that? And so, like I said, I think the easy answers for most people is just to take the easy out and let's move on.
You know,
Let's find another spot.
my next question is, do you think athletes are afraid to get cut these days and rebound? I mean, my take on that question is if you what okay, so let's talk about kind of like how everything is rated these days in the rankings, right? Your
Mhm.
ranking goes down.
Yeah.
Does the athlete go, that's messed up. I don't like that. I'm gonna show you that,
Hmm.
or you get cut from your high school team as a freshman. Do you come back your sophomore year and say, you know what? I'm doing no matter what, I'm gonna show them my value. I
Right.
want to have leverage now.
Right.
You know, I mean, so that's a question I asked, where are we at as a group of athletes these days trying to figure that one out a little
Yeah.
bit? Where do they go? The question is, where do athletes go to kind of figure that out? Is that something their coach has to tell them? Which I disagree. Like, I don't think a coach should have to tell you you're good.
Right.
you know, what is that something like home training? Go back to our podcast on home training.
Mhm.
Does it start at home? Which I think it does.
I think so too.
My answer to that question is it's home training. It
Right.
starts at home because your parent or parents or grandparents or whoever's raising you has instilled this value system in who you are as a person. Forget about the sports, who you are or what's in your name. You
Right.
know, my father was big on this, Aaron. My parents, mom and dad, but like, hey, don't embarrass our name.
Yeah. Yep.
Like,
There's
like,
a
boy, what's wrong with you? Don't
uphold the
embarrass our name.
family name. There's that, yeah,
Yeah,
that pride.
right.
No, I agree with what you're saying. Now, I do think that coaches can play a part.
Okay.
Um, and this is what I mean by that. What I mean by that is coaches have the responsibility to give honest assessments.
Right.
Coaches shouldn't be blowing any more smoke up their ass than anyone else.
Right.
Coaches should, they're part of the development process is knowing where you are.
Mm,
And I think our responsibility as trainers and coaches is telling them honestly where they're at. Now, they can do with whatever they want with that information, but I think we do play a part. And because we have the level of expertise that gives us the space to be able to say, hey, in my opinion, I think this kid is grade A, B, C, D, E, F, uh,
right.
and express that in all sincerity to these kids who have these goals, so that they're not, you know, the emperor of no clothes on. And so this way they can, either shit or get off the pot. They know exactly where they stand, at least from their coach's standpoint, from an assessment standpoint, from your likelihood to play for me and all of that sort of thing,
Right.
and use that as part of their compass. Um, because the problem that I see is a lot of athletes and parents listen to everyone but the coaches.
Oh my
Right,
goodness. Right? I
and it's
mean,
like,
chatter is
I'm getting questioned and fact checked by 13 and 14-year olds, and because they've talked to their neighbor who does CrossFit. you know it's ridiculous. I've been in the business 30 years. So why would you come to me, ask me for answers, and because you maybe don't get the answers you don't like, that you were expecting, then go search someplace else? But I think that's part of the problem is we're in I'll put it in a social media aspect. People have developed they have their own internal algorithms
mm,
where they want to hear what they want to hear.
right.
You know? So it's just like that. It's just like Facebook and Instagram and everything else. If you get reinforced with those things that you want to hear and believe, but not what's contrary. And I think people operate that way.
Yeah, they sure do. They want to hear what they want to hear. And
Yeah.
then when they don't hear it, they go to other resources so that person can tell them.
Yeah.
what they want to hear.
Or they look for reasons to discount what they've heard.
Right.
It's like, yeah, it's okay, you
It's
know.
all right.
Yeah.
That's what you believe in. But the bottom line, as I said, there's going to be a yes or a no.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a time when the uniform or whatever you're wearing is taken away because you either didn't believe in yourself or you weren't realistic or have an idea about what's really being done here,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know?
So, again, kind of to circle back to our topic here
Right.
in terms of, do you really believe? Well, that's a question only you can answer. And if you don't, you've got to start to figure out, how do I believe? Well, start to look at the circle of people that are around you. Have you put yourself in the right environment with the right people getting the right information to be successful?
Right.
Um, what have been your successes and your milestones in your development? Sometimes it takes a while, but there are, certain things that might happen that aren't necessarily groundbreaking to you, but those little things that start to show, hey, I'm building this mountain of success,
Hmm.
to where I want to go. So it takes a lot of internal reflection, um, to be able to do that. I mean, I'm just one of those guys who always self-assessed, always self-assessed, always measured, and that was kind of how I stayed on task. And being highly competitive, that was even more fuel for me.
Hmm.
But, everyone is different, everyone's motivated differently. You got to figure out what that motivation is, and then build your belief system on top of that.
Mm. Well said. I I don't really have anything else to say in regards to that. I think you really wrap that up about how to get your belief system where it needs to be. Aaron, I think it's uh it's a good way to end today with what you just said. It was excellent.
Yeah.
So, with that said, Aaron, ask
Excellent.
Aaron and ask EJ today on our podcast. Thank you for joining us, Coach EJ, the brand.
It's Coach Aaron, the source. Again, I'd like to ask you guys to hit the thumbs up or the thumbs down button. Doesn't matter for us. We're trying to work the algorithm here. If you've got a question or comment, send it in, email us, text, whatever you'd like, and we'll try and answer it.
Absolutely.
Can't answer it if you don't ask it. We'll see you.